Good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on your location. Thank you for joining us today for RSI's Lunch and Learn webinar discussing behind-the-scenes information on county criminal searches or local court record searches. I'm Stephanie and I work in compliance and I'm a special projects manager at Reference Services. Just a reminder, we are recording the webinar today and the recording and slides will be sent via email within the next day or two. We wanted to start out with our legal disclaimer. As you know, we are a consumer reporting agency and we are not attorneys. So any information given in today's webinar is considered educational in nature and should not be considered legal advice. Joining us today, we have a special guest, Vince Brote, who is a subject matter expert in the background screening industry, including furnishing criminal record information to CRAs like us. I have heard from a reliable source that Vince has 20 years of experience in the background screening industry, and we appreciate him joining us today. Facilitating today's conversation with Vince are Brad, our president and COO, and Alicia, RSI's Director of Operations and Compliance. Our agenda today includes several topics that have real-time impact on our county searches, what information is available, and how long they take to complete, including cyber attacks, technical issues, automated versus clerk-assisted jurisdictions, turnaround time, personal identifiers, and clean slate laws. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions at all, please submit them in the Q&A chat, and we will dedicate time at the end to address those questions. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brad to get the conversation started.
Well, great. Thank you, Stephanie. And Vince, again, thank you for being with us today. Before we get started, I just want to let everybody know that I think our goal here today is to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit on our industry and explain some of the things that are going on out there as we try to collect criminal records. Certainly, I know from our perspective at Reference Services, it seems like the last 3 or 4 years we've run into all kinds of issues from weather-related issues, technical issues, and Vince and I will talk about those a little bit today. But to start, I think it's important that we put a couple of definitions in front of you so that you know what our roles are as far as CRAs and furnishers. And so I'll start with a CRA is a consumer reporting agency. So that's what Reference Services is. Others in the space would be someone like TransUnion or Equifax that everybody's familiar with on credit reporting. But by definition, under the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, a consumer reporting agency collects information and provides reports on consumers that are used to decide whether to provide consumer credit, insurance, employment, and other purposes. And other purposes could be things like tenant information. But the key here is that we as a CRA is that we assemble and evaluate the consumer report information and then provide those results to our end users or our clients in this case. The Fair Credit Reporting Act is what holds CRAs and creditors to provide the information in the consumer report responsible, and we are responsible for the correcting inaccurate or incomplete information in the report. So you hear us all the time talk about quality assurance and QAing things when we speak to our clients, and that's what we do as we gather this information and assemble it into a report. We're looking at that information for accuracies and making sure we are reporting on the proper person. Now, we are also liable for very strict FCRA procedures to ensure that accuracy, and those are all spelled out in our policies and procedures. Now, a furnisher is an entity that furnishes that information that's collected to consumers or about consumers to one or more consumer reporting agencies for inclusion in the consumer report. So the furnisher is really the starting point of the stream of information about the candidate. So to put that in layman's terms, they're the researcher. They're the researcher in the field that's going to the courthouses, collecting the data, sending that data to the CRA so that we can then assemble it for reporting purposes. And then each furnisher, much like a CRA, must establish and implement reasonable written policies and procedures for accuracy and integrity of the information that is furnished. They also have to provide complete and accurate information. They have to investigate disputes, as they come to the Consumer Reporting Agency, and then they're responsible to help correct, delete, or verify with information within 30 or 45 days of receipt of that dispute. So we play different roles, but yet combined, we provide the reports that are given to our clients, the end user. So I'm going to tee up Vince. Vince is a subject matter expert, and as Stephanie said, has been in the business for 20 plus years. So Vince, thank you for being with us today. Really appreciate you being a part of the conversation.
Oh, thank you all so much. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. And yes, it's true. I started in background screening at the age of 6 years old. So 20 years experience, yeah, for sure. I started around the turn of the century, kind of the whole 9/11 boom for this industry, so to speak, when things got really interesting with security and information and wanting to know who's who. So happy to be here today. I see the question on screen is, what's the most challenging aspect of being a furnisher? It's simply doing exactly what Brad stated earlier, is making sure that we have all of the correct processes and repeatable procedures for gathering information on applicants or candidates, as we call them, subjects. As a furnisher, we do not know who these individuals are. We do not know what their gain or interest is in what they're doing, why a background check is even required for them. It could be a new job. It could be an apartment lease. It could be approval for benefits or another program of some kind. Could be all kinds of things. Our job is simply to not have any bias associated with that knowledge and specifically focus on the quality and the accuracy of the research we perform to ensure all of the information and the data that we provide to RSI is as accurate and as complete as can be humanly expected, or as humanly possible, as we like to say. That's probably the most challenging aspect of it. We don't see the full dimension of what is going on with each individual. We are responsible, though, for making sure that we get that information, we get it right. In the event there are disputes or questions, we've got to go above and beyond to ensure what was done was correct and accurate. That's probably the most challenging aspect for sure.
And Vince, I would add in there that our teams spend a lot of time communicating back and forth via phone calls and emails, so that we're kind of connecting the dots, I guess, if you will. Don't know if you even know. Just tickets seem to be going all day long, and that's just part of the process of making sure that we're all on the same page as things come and go as we transfer this data back and forth.
Yeah, a good example of that would be, to put it at scale for everyone listening, when a search is performed, often we are asked, from your perspective, either the applicant or yourself will ask RSI and in turn us numerous questions, such as how long do we expect the search to take? Do we believe there is any possible information of a record or a criminal record or hit of any kind? When there are hits or records or results, we often have questions about what something means, a statute code, a disposition with a conditional discharge, things that make us become real experts in navigating the criminal justice system and their organization of the courthouses and public access terminals that the information is contained in. Then there's certainly other questions too. We were expecting to find something else. An applicant admitted a charge, looks here like it wasn't found. Can you explain why it would not be found? So that's another time where Brad and Stephanie and at least the team, they're all going back and forth with our team as furnishers. Even in the absence of data, there could be very valuable questions that we've got to uncover answers to. Very challenging.
So let's talk about common name policy. I know that CRAs work with furnishers over kind of standards, if you will, for the common name. So if you can kind of explain to our listeners what that common name policy means.
Yeah, so common names are going to be names that we could go as scientific as citing the U.S. Census Bureau for what the most common names are, but they're typically known as names a lot of people share: John Smith, Robert Brown, I believe Robert Green, I think on the last census was the most one. And in full transparency, there are also common names for different ethnicities as well. You may find common names for Hispanic or Middle American names as well that are very common, that repeat and recur frequently. So the reason it's really important to have a policy around how common names are handled with respect to performing research to find whether or not they have a criminal record tied to them is that the name is the tip of the spear. It's the initial spark that's used whenever someone has a background check done on them at public access terminals at courthouses, or we'll get into talking about clerks of court, I'm sure, in a bit, and how helpful they are or not helpful they are. It's the first thing they all use, the terminals and everyone else. Oh, give me the name. Let's start with the name. You know, what's in a name? It's everything. So it's important to know whether or not we're going to be searching just with the name, or if we have other pieces of identifying information. I think it's called personally identifiable information. We call it PII for short, because it's a really long term. A date of birth, an address, part or full of the social security number, any of those other PII markers are really critical when you're dealing with a common name like Robert Greene or John Smith. We can find a record in Cobb County, Georgia, where I happen to be located today, and there are thousands of records for John Smith, hundreds of thousands likely, without exaggerating. However, when I begin to filter that down and say, oh, his date of birth was January 29th of 1976, how many possible records have those two things? Well, the number goes from thousands to likely, dozens or single digit number. And then if you can triangulate with an address after that, it becomes even more accurate in the reporting. So it's really important to have a great common name policy or an exception name policy, or in the case of RSI and the furnisher, we prefer at all times to not report just based on name only matches. We always try to find another identifier somewhere in the case information. Oh, their date of birth was this, their address at the time of arrest or arraignment was this, something to help really designate that this truly is the person that you're searching for, or it's not, because we did find those markers and they don't match up with what the applicant has listed on their application. So I know it's a bit longer winded than probably most wanted, but that's why it's so critically important to not just go, oh, well, yeah, it's Robert Brown, I'll just report everything. It takes so long to do that.
I know for us, and I can just tell our clients that are on the call that our policy is we want at least 3 identifiers. We won't go just on a common name. I mean, because we're held to accuracy of reporting, it's much more important that we report accurate data than to report something that is just off of a name. So we work with all of our furnishers to have at least 3 markers. And so a full name would be 1, and then date of birth and social or something else. So let's talk about automated searches versus clerk assisted searches. I think in this world, you would think everything's available through data. It's certainly not, but all of these things have differences in turnaround time, accuracy of reporting. All states and jurisdictions have different things. So just kind of briefly, give maybe a summary of what all that means.
Yeah, sure. So I'll take everyone on a quick journey from 50,000 foot view all the way down to, ground level. In the United States today, there are roughly 3,300 plus individual counties that anyone could live in or have lived in at one time. So that's how many places at the county level a background check could occur. And to Brad's point, you would hope and you would think by 2024 that would all be available in one handy dandy place, but it's not. Each county represents sort of its own SKU, its own way of doing things, its own product, so to speak. About 50 to 60% of those counties have some kind of online primary resource that they absolutely direct us and others to. Oh, the information is available here online. Great. The other, 40% and change, you have to go in person directly into a courthouse. Just like if you got a ticket, a speeding ticket, they got to show up to court. Oh boy, how nerve-wracking that is. And you see people, turning over all their, their phones and also as they go in. It's the same thing every day for the court researchers. So the difference between online and in person is that much of what is online can be automated. Technology can search those websites, They're certified as accurate by the state or county level government that hosts them. And automation can go and search those websites and retrieve information very quickly, even quicker than a human could with, say, a manual search of the website. Whereas if you go in person, I kind of already explained. Now I'm already taking longer because I've got to do a pat down. I've got to go through a metal detector. I've got to be walked upstairs. I've got to wait in line because there are several people trying to access 3 terminals. So right away, you can kind of see the differences in speed to obtaining data. The turnaround time in automated areas is going to be minutes or hours, likely same day in many areas. It would only take longer as if there were questions on records, such as making sure we have 3 identifiers. Perhaps the online source is limited in how many, in the names it provides, and we need to contact the court directly to get more. So it could take a little longer for those. Versus clerk assisted or in-person searches, we're waiting on human beings to go through paper and look through old files. Oh, this pencil that they used to write this down is faded. I'm going to have to look at this under a different light. It takes a lot longer. That's why when the folks at RSI may say things like, oh, this search may not be back for another week, maybe next Thursday. And someone may think, well, gosh, I mean, it's 2024. You could just Google it. Well, unfortunately, we may have to go in person and leave that in the hands of a clerk of court, an employee of the court, who isn't paid by the search. They're not paid by the hour to do this work. They're simply doing this as a public service for public data. They may take a lot longer to make sure that the information they're providing is accurate. They may have to go through archives and other places. So that's a bit of a, high level view, how much is automated, how much is not, and then ground level, the real difference in speed of obtaining data.
Yeah, Vince, you made a comment about the counties actually certifying that their data that's automated is accurate. That's interesting, but I know at the state level and the federal level, we find all kinds of inaccuracies with the state databases because they're a roll up from the local county. So that's a different conversation when we start talking about the national criminal stuff that we do, but just wanting to throw that out there.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great point. I just want to clarify when I say that they, what they're saying is that the information online at the county level would be the same as what's found in the courthouse. There can always be a typo that a clerk has made on something that would show up online. That's my fault. I want to make sure I clarify that. They're simply constituting that the information is the exact same as if you were to come in person.
right.
And that's really the only guarantee they're going to make, for sure. That's it.
And then we certainly see lots of issues at various jurisdictions. I know, during COVID, we had people out for extended period of time. That was certainly a one-off situation that lasted for about 1.5 years or 2. But recently, we've seen lots of cyber attacks with this automated information. We've seen computer issues. We've seen where one clerk is in a county and that one clerk is sick for a week. But you want to talk about that, or maybe specifically what's going on in Fulton, Georgia? That seems to be the latest issue that's kind of sitting out there across the country.
Sure thing. The 60-second headline here is cyber attackers have fully realized what I just said earlier is accurate, that 50-60% of this record information and people's personal information is available online. So what they're able to do is they're able to hack those online websites, or sometimes they're sources you log into with a account, and they're holding them ransom. They're holding the actual county, like Fulton County or Kansas. They're saying, hey, if you want to get this data back and you want to have access to this public data so lawyers can perform searches going into cases and so background screening can get the right people in the right jobs, you need to pay us a, pun intended, king's ransom for this information, and we'll release the hold and the embargo on the site. And that's happening right now in this industry. It's unprecedented. That has never happened before until now. So we're in a bit of uncharted water here. There's the headline. What's happening in Fulton County and other places like Kansas is they've realized that these are areas that have lots of that PII online. The names, the dates of birth, address history, social security numbers, tattoos, eye color, other special markings, hair color, ethnicity. It's all available there. It's public data. So they're holding that ransom in exchange for money or access to other things, and they're trying to harvest that data and keep that data. Why would they want that data? usually for identity fraud and other purposes. So on one hand, I'm telling you about this issue with cyber attacks. And on the other hand, it may be a good transition into another topic of why are sources limiting and redacting their information? There you go, right there online. Why are they pulling back the dates of birth and the socials? They pulled back socials a long time ago, but why are addresses no longer available? Why are clean slate laws going into effect? Well, these are two separate but complex issues. I'll do my best to summarize at the ground level. The PII redaction is related to identity theft and other types of ransomware attacking. These places, these counties and these governments, they're under significant pressure from voters, individuals just like us, their constituents and their supporters, to remove this information because perhaps they've been adversely affected. Someone stole their identity, someone went on a big shopping spree, or someone ruined their credit score. Absolutely, they have every right to voice that, to express that, to get something done about that. More power to them. Unfortunately, it can come at a cost where now in Los Angeles, there are no dates of birth there. You have to go directly to a courthouse. You can no longer get it online. They're making it harder to get. And then the other thing with clean slate laws is it's very difficult in this day and age, with the workforce being what it is and the unemployment rate being what it is, that you're going to find that absolutely perfect unicorn candidate. If I'm talking to anyone in HR and recruiting who's on the line, they've got the right amount of experience, they've got that perfect education history, they've got all the relevant work experience. They're not asking for way too much compensation at all. It's actually below what we wanted. And they also have no type of record, traffic offense or low-level offense at all. Those are becoming more and more rare as the unemployment rate gets lower and lower in the industries we work in. So clean slate laws happen, they exist to help give people a chance as well. Maybe they've had a low-level misdemeanor charge, something to that effect, and the state level they've been rallied with other supporters to say, hey, we would love all these traffic misdemeanors in the state of Georgia. Every traffic case is technically a misdemeanor. Can we get those wiped off the terminals? Give us a clean slate. So when we go out looking for an apartment and for a job and for benefits, we're not going to have this lower level stuff happening. So that's kind of the origin of it. It's taking on a different life of its own. I'll probably stop there because I don't want to become a PVSA, representative. But that's why changes to public records are happening. It has nothing to do with you all and the good work you're doing. It has nothing to do with RSI and the outstanding work that they do. It has everything to do with individuals within those areas having been negatively affected by others who wish to do harm with that information.
It's certainly making our jobs a lot harder in that,
Yes.
Our clients want to see all that information and they expect it in a quick turnaround time so they can make decisions. But boy, it's making things difficult for sure.
Yeah, it really is.
So kind of a last question here, maybe to talk about, we use the county criminal data to report from, but then we obviously get national criminal data, but we use it as what we call pointer data. So you want to have a quick conversation about that? Again, it kind of goes back to what I said a minute ago. Some of that's roll up information from the county, some of it's not. But I don't know, do you have any thoughts here on this topic?
Yeah, I sure do. The county criminal search is always going to be the most accurate source of information. It's the primary source or the point of origin where the data was created by the courts and the judges and where it's housed originally. It's always going to be the best initial source. When you look at something like a national criminal database, it's almost like a compilation or a greatest hits package of all the criminal data that has ever been made publicly available for aggregating and reselling. It's frozen in time. It's a snapshot in one time of what that data looked like from the primary source. So here's the quick analogy I like to use, and I sometimes like having a visual aid with this, but the difference between a county search and a national criminal database search is that a county search is only an inch wide, but it's a mile deep. And a national criminal database search is a mile wide, but it's barely an inch deep. So what do I mean by that? Well, for a county, you're only going to get that one individual county geographically an inch wide in nature, but you're going to get every single piece of information available at that county as updated as they have made it available with no latency and a clerk who can assist if there are problems. It goes all the way down, very deep. A database is going to cover a much broader, larger spectrum, multiple states, multiple counties, various sources, billions of records, but it's not going to go any further than just that one particular record for that one particular name. You won't see anything else that may have been related to that individual or any other case types they were associated with. You're not going to get the deepest, broadest search done. This is why they work so well together. They complement each other very well, and that one can help point you in a direction maybe you didn't see. And then when you go to that direction at the county level, you can get all the information you need verified at the primary source. They're companions to one another. One isn't better or worse than the other.
Yeah, thank you. That's very well said. It's I haven't heard your analogy of an inch wide and a mile deep, but that certainly makes a lot of sense from our perspective. So we've kind of come to the end of our day, Vince. We always try to keep these about 30 minutes and kind of get in and out and kind of give a brief update to our clients. But I will ask Alicia, is there any questions or anything in the Q&A there that we should address real quick?
No, there haven't been any questions submitted.
Okay, great. Well, Vince, I'd like to thank you again for your time today. It's very, very helpful. I hope our clients got a little look behind the curtain, if you will, and what we do on a daily basis, and appreciate your time for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Pleasure being here. Thank you all.
All right, Stephanie, I'll just turn it back over to you for closing comments.
All right, thank you, Brad. Yeah, I just wanted to jump in with a comment and one more announcement before we wrap up. I heard something recently on an industry webinar that really resonated with me, and so I wanted to share it with this group. And we at RSI, as well as our furnishers, we all consider ourselves to be custodians of the background screening industry as a whole, not just for our individual businesses, but partnering together to represent the entire industry. We work to maintain a high level of integrity, high standards, and an attitude of continuous improvement. And this outlook not only helps us reduce risk for our current clients, but ensure that background screening stays relevant and useful as we all move forward in the employment space, and then in other spaces as well. I just wanted to say we hope you found today's webinar helpful. And as a reminder, a copy of the slides and the recording will be emailed to all the attendees within a few days. And if you have any questions, you can email us at compliance@referenceservices.com if there's something you think of after the webinar is over. Thank you so much for attending the webinar today.